Okay, good evening. I hope you're all doing well, especially the guys who are strolling in with some cookies.
Cheers.
Dan?
Cheers. One cookie.
Cheers.
That's me.
Good evening. We're going to be learning Maseches Avodah Zara, Daf Samach Gimel, and Emir Tashem will creep up a little bit onto Daf Samach Daled Amud Aleph. We have a couple of bigger block coming up, and then it'll be shorter again. We'll be able to, Emir Tashem, stay on pace this week. Right now, we're starting at the bottom of Samach Beis Mid Beis on the very last line. You may recall that in yesterday's shiur we spoke about a case of Bei Rav Yanai, where Rav Yanai would borrow fruits from poor people during Shvius, and he would pay them back after Shvius. So we said, how is that possible? And the Gemara explained from the world of Esnon Zona. We know a general din in Chumash that the gift that one gives a zona for her services is not allowed to be used in the Beis Hamikdash. It's really just not, it's not the right way to do things. However, as we pointed out in yesterday's shiur, that if there's a gap between the gift and the usage of the zona, or vice versa, between the tashmish of the zona and the gift, then we said, no, they're too far apart, they're separate. And that was how the Gemara said that just like by Esnan Zona, if there's a big gap between the Maisabiyah and the matana in either direction, matana first and then the bia, or bia first and then the matana, either direction, as long as there's enough of a gap, we said that the two things are no longer connected, and so too by the world of Shvius.
If he gives her the matana now, with the understanding that it is a prepay for 2 months from now, it's not a gift.
We're going to discuss. We're going to see iterations of this in the Gemara. These little, we'll see little. Correct. That would be very difficult to say. And the first case the Gemara is going to bring up when we get there is, what if she gets the gift and she's makar of the gift before they have tashmish amita? Because it interrupts, right? Because it's not a vadai that they'll have tashmish amita. It's just a vadai that could be what even with your agreement that you just stipulated, what would happen if she did that? Would that show you that she was an owner yet? Does she make a kinyan from the animal, or is the kinyan only the mafreya from after tashmish? That's going to be the first case that we jump into. Anyways, but let's just keep our focus here that the case we're really talking about is the Peiros Shvius case, where it's really, right? So we learn from Esnan Zona back to Shvius. Just like by Esnan Zona, we can bifurcate the Nesina and the Bia. So too, by Shvius, we can bifurcate the borrowing of Shvius in year 7 and the giving back of the equal of those Peiros in year 8 to the poor person. So we learn from one, so I get to the Ma'in in Shemitah Eitzel Har Sinai. Oh my gosh. Look at that. I didn't even notice. That's terrible. I should have noticed. Then it would have been a little funnier. Okay, so the Gemara, we were analyzing that case, and now we're going to analyze the case a little bit more. And this case, Stan, was the case we were just talking about. So he gives her a gift, and only later are they together. That's was Stan's question. Maybe we should say, okay, he gave the gift whenever he gave it. 2 months, 2 years, 2 decades later, whenever they're together for those services, he still paid for the services. So, what kind of bifurcation is this? At the end of the day, they're tied together. It's very hard, very difficult to separate them. And that's what Rashi says at the top of the page. He gives us the lamdas. Rashi Okay, so you gave the gift in year 1 and you were together in year 5. Okay, but at the end of the day, the whole lamdas of the Esnan was tashmish amita. It's not a ruse. He was clear about what his aspirations were. This isn't a secret. We know her profession, and he was just paying for it. So says the Gemara.
Oh, that he's locking in a price for 5 years from now for the market.
Right, that could be.
That could weird, be. But
it does sound weird a little bit.
So people do that all the time.
This is true.
Is this common for zonas to be giving korbanos?
That's true. Yeah. Maybe it's a chatas. Chatas is only b'shogeg. Okay, good point. So how does the Gemara respond? Top of Samach Gimel Amud Aleph, Amar Rabbi Elazar the Amora, Kshekadma v'hi kravto. The case is where he gave her the esnan, he gave her the tlem, year 1. They were going to be together in year 3. She brought the korban in year 2. So the lamdas of the initial case was, hey, it should be that lemafreya, once they're together, the two things are connected. Like Rashi says, it's almanas bia that nasnula. But if it's interrupted by the korban, hechidami, says the Gemara, Ida amar la kni lach me'achshav, kni lich me'achshav, it's really yours. Pshita deshari daha, leise b'shaz bi'u matana be'almo diyavla. If when he gave her the tle, the esnan, he said to her, this is yours. It's yours now. So now the lemafreya doesn't apply anymore. It's yours now. I'm giving you now. You still owe me, but I'm giving it to you now. So then the Gemara says that's matana be'alma. Why? Because it was not tethered halachically to the bia. Because you gave it as a gift now. In your mind, you are connecting them. But halachically, that device, that esnan is now separate from the bia. And if she brought it as a korban, perfectly mutter. No problem at all.
2 years later, he comes and says, I paid up already. That would be a problem.
No, the Gemara says that case is pshita deshari. It's a matana.
Madam. In other words, he says, I'm not paying it for his thing.
But it was K'niyut Me'achshav.
So the kinyan, what you're saying, Stan, is that the bia is the kinyan. That's what you're saying. Is that the bia shows us that really the kinyan is only now chal. That's why the language over here in this hechidami is if he says kni lich me'achshav, this is yours now, it's not conditional. She may still provide services because that's what they agreed to, but the korban is not actually tied to the bia because he said kni lich me'achshav.
Yeah, it's not a question.
But in the world of kinyanim, they're separate. Of course, socially you're right, but halachically it's not correct.
Irreparable behavior, you shouldn't be accepting any foul.
That's what Eric said.
That way, yeah, it's probably true. Yeah.
Be like, oh, back to this matana.
Yeah, sure you did.
She's a lambda. She's a lambda.
Just a girl. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Upstanding woman. And then says the Gemara, what's the other possibility? If he didn't say to her that it's yours now, how can she be makriv it? After all, it's not yet hers, because the conditional piece of the gift is the bia. And therefore, v'ish ki yaktish es beso kodesh amarachmana ma beso birshusav kol birshuso. Without getting, there's a lot of Rishonim on this one. The Ritva in particular is focused on this, that if the item is actually still in her property, why do we assume that it's not hers, at least in some way, shape, and form, right? If he already gave it to her, so what are we really talking about? So the Ritva wants to say over here that it's a pikadon. I'm being mafkid my animal to you between now and then, which is different than a kinyan. So that's what he says is going on over here. And mimanashach, one way or the other, whether or not he said kini lich me'achshav or he didn't say it, she still shouldn't be able to bring the korban. Either it's hers and it's pashut, or it's not hers and it's pashut the other way, that she shouldn't be able to bring it. So says the Gemara, Ella, to Amar lo, what did he say to her? Lehave gabich ad shazbia. You can have the tle as an esnon from now until the time we're together. But if you need it, then kni me'achshav. So he has a split condition. One is that it's all tied together, and the second is that if you need it, you can use it. So that's what the Gemara says. It's very, very odd. And what then would be the din? So yeah. Anyways, that would be the din. Is that she would just be able to use the animal. Kshekdamto v'hikravto. All right, let's take this still further. Boy Rav Oshaya, kadma v'hikdishto mahu. What if she went ahead and was makdish the animal while it was in her possession, but she wasn't makriv it? She was only makdish. Can she be makdish an animal to sanctify it and put it in the geder of hektish? Kevan de Amar Mar, because we just learned, because we've learned in the past, I should say, Gemara's in Kedushin and Baba Basra and other places, that Amirasa legva ki misirasa lehedyot, that when one says something about making something hektish, therefore, Keman de akriv te dami, it says if she already brought it as a korban, namely she is able to make it into hektish. Hodilma hashta mia hakoi v'ise be'ene. Or perhaps we should not say that because it wasn't karev yet, and we're looking at the animal right now. So you can't say that that's the case, and therefore we would not say that she can be makdish the animal. Chakira. Says the Gemara, but tifshot mid Rabbi Elazar. We should have said earlier. We should have said that the answer to this is like we saw earlier. Damar Rabbi Elazar, shekadma v'krivto, only dafka hakrivto. I was reading the word wrong. Shekadma v'hakrivto. Dafka hakrivto, aval haktishto lo, that perhaps we should be in the daik from Rabbi Elazar, that if she's makdish and makriv, that's one thing. But if she's only makdish, then it's a zero. Maybe she can't be makdish at all. So the Gemara wants to say, you're asking so good, that's actually my question. The Gemara says you tried to answer from Rabbi Elazar. My question is within Rabbi Elazar, says the Gemara. Do Rabbi Elazar gufei kami baile mai? Do we say mifshat pshita le Rabbi Elazar dehakrivto davka aval akdishto lo? Would we say that Rabbi Elazar is very clear that being makdish is not possible? Daha'ise b'shaspia, or odilma hakrivto pshita le v'hakdishto mesafkale, or being makriv is clear and being makdish is a suffix. And teku, we really don't know how to understand Rabbi Elazar as to whether or not he was being extremely dafka when he said hakdishto v'hakrivto. We're not sure. So the next part of the brisa that we saw yesterday, and again, let's remember where we're holding because we're going to come back to it. We were using the world of Esna and Zona that we can bifurcate the gift from the Tashma Shamita. We learned from that back to Shvius, right? That was how we said that we could borrow in the year of Shvius from the Aniyim and give them back in the Shminis. So the next part of that brisa from Esna and Zona was Bala ba'achar kach nasan la esnana mutter. That had it been that they had Tashma Shamita first, and there was a gap in time between that and the gift, that's mutter. Says the Gemara, or Mini, how can you say that? If it were to be the case that they were together, and only later did he pay her, which would have been our pashtus, actually. That would have been our baseline. We would have, it was like the way Stan was talking when we started. We would have assumed that they're always tied. That's Rashi's lamdas. That part seemed very clear. This brisa says, I don't care how long it is, even if it's 3 years later, it's still going to be problematic. So now we have a stira, because our Mishnah says that if the Tashmish was first and there was a gap in time, and then he gives her the esnan that it's mutter. But this brisa says that even 3 years later it's aser. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Rav Chizda lo kasha. Ha da Amar his ba'ali li b'tleh zeh, this specific tleh, in which case he earmarked the tleh, this specific tleh, which has a name, whatever the animal's name is. It's branded with a name on the back, Betsy. So that tleh, even 3 years later, will always be lemafreya. It's betleze, he's ba'ali betleze. But if, says the Gemara, that it was a little bit different, ha de amar la, and in one case it's he's ba'ali betlestam. I'm giving you a tleh, but I don't care if you pay. If you know, I don't. I'm saying she'll say you're going to give me a tleh, but I don't care which one it is. So if they pre-earmark, then there is no time span that would stop the connection from the bia to the gift, and therefore would taka be aser. But if it was stam an animal, so because the animal wasn't earmarked, so then our Mishnah would stand correct. The brisa, I should say, at the bottom of Samach Bezim would stand correct. That if it was a stam animal, then we can have a case where it would taka be mutter if it was tashmish first, and then the esnan later. That could be mutter if they were far enough away apart. Says the Gemara, why? If you just say a regular tleh, my have, even if you say that tleh, sorry, not correct. That was not correct what I just said. Even if it were to be the case, if he were to say this specific animal, so what? There was no animal yet. So what Mashicha was there? So they pre-discussed before they were together. She said, I charge a tleh. He says, I'll give you this tleh. So we wanted to say that the idea of this tleh would make it that the animal's earmarked, and then it would always be connected, and therefore we couldn't separate and bifurcate the bia from the tleh. But that's not true here, because mechaser mashicha, she never did mashicha. Let's think of the flow of events. Man meets woman. She says, I charge a tleh. He says, the tzleh that I have, this one whose name is Betsy, I'll give it to you later. So we just answered up our Gemara that that's the brisa that says that it's aser, that even if it's 3 years later, it's going to be aser because he earmarked the tzleh. Why would that be true? Hamachaser Mashicha. She never did Mashicha. She never met the animal. So what kind of kinyan is that? Why would we call that an esnan? An esnan is where she acquires an item for her services. So says the Gemara, two possible answers. One is bizona, avodas kochavim delo kanya b'mashicha. One could be a goyish medal who is not able to make a kinyan mashicha. Rashi gives the marimakom. Rashi dibur hamaschil oved kochavim lav bar mashicha. The ksiva mashicha b'Yisrael ksiva o kana miyad amisecha. The kinyan of yad of mashicha is only true for amcha. It's only true for Klal Yisrael. So therefore, seemingly, the diuk of the Gemara is that the verbal agreement that you have with the goy, where you say to the woman, my verbal agreement is to give you a tleh, that is sufficient for that to make it hers in some way, shape, or form, or maybe the bia is the machriya. But it seems over here from the Gemara that if she's a zona ovedes kochavim, that even when he says betzleh zeh, there's still some type of kinyan because Mashiach doesn't apply to a goy. And v'i'bai some say no. La'olam bezona Yisraelis rachmana litzlan, that perhaps it's a Yiddish girl who's a zona. Uchegon dekai bechatzera, and he said, I put it in your yard. I put the tzla in your yard, so that's why you have some kind of kinyan. So says the Gemara, well, dekai bechatzera ba'la ve'achar kach nasan la hakanya la. If you put it in before, she already acquired the animal. That's not ba'la ve'achar kach nasan la. She already has it. You put it in her feet in her yard already. So, we're not talking about matana now. We were trying to answer the brisa. We had a stira in brisas. Our brisa on the bottom of Samach Beis and Beis, when trying to answer for Shvi, said that if there is a break between the bia and the giving of the gift, we said it's mutter, that we can bifurcate the bia from the nesina of the gift. That was what we said. So the Gemara here then posed a problem that we found another brisa, not talking about matana, but another case of ba'la v'achar kach nasan la, that even 3 years later it's going to be asur. So not matana. So how did we answer that? We said, well, the case where 3 years later it's going to be asur is where the animal was earmarked in advance. But in the case which is our brisa from the bottom of Samach Beis and Beis, where that's not the case, that was only because it wasn't an earmarked animal. So this is not talking with a brisa. This is just not a case of matana. So the Gemara says that maybe it's a zona Yisrael and it's in her backyard. But if it's in her backyard, then she should have been kona already. Says the Gemara, lo tzricha deshavye nehala aputiki. He gave her that animal, but it was only the backup payment. It was not the front line of payment. He really wants to pay on the credit card. But if his credit card is maxed out, so then, okay, then you can use the sheep. It was just there as a backup collateral, just there as a backup payment. Da'amar la, imay sina lich zuzi mikan ad yom ploni mutab. If I would like to pay you with cash, give me 60 days to pay you in cash, and then give aldik. But ve'ilo, if not, then shakle be'esnanich. Then you can take payment with the esnan. So that could be the case, says the Gemara, when we're talking about afilu mikan ve'ad shaloshanim that esnana aser. We're talking about a case of betzlezeh, specific case. How could it be if she would be a Yiddish Shemedel, she never did Mashiach, it was put on her chatzer? But if it was in her chatzer, then she was kona. No, it was this conditional case scenario where it would have been aser many years later, and that's taka still how the case would have been determined if it was a Yid. If it was a goy, which was the first answer we saw, no problem anyways, because a goy has no din of Mashiach. If you make a kinyan with a goy that's not a din of Mashiach, I don't know what it is, but it's certainly not a din of Mashiach. What?
Yeah.
It's cash. We discussed this once, actually, maybe more than once. Huh?
Probably more than once.
Probably more than once. But it also depends what's going on. It could be that the transaction, that there's another machriya. Let's say in a case like this, that the mechayev, it could be the bia.
Right, so that's,
It could be, it's not really, the cash is after the fact.
there is no cash in such a case where it's a payment for work. I want
Oh,
to call it that.
right.
There's no mosh. So
What is that? Wait, what do you mean?
it's.
Ba'aleha, and then later he
and
pays
it's-
her. He's paying.
Exchange anywhere.
He's paying her. What do you mean?
Not cash.
Oh, okay, but it could be
You know what I'm
cash. It could be.
A normal kinyan by a guy is he buys my horse, he has to give me cash. Sheila's not good enough.
Correct,
He has
correct.
to give me cash. Here, there's no cash. So I guess the work is the kinyan. I call it-
Also, like,
whatever the word is.
well, like, how does halal? Let's say that everybody was Jewish, right? So you have a Jewish man and a zona Israelis, and they're masking to a deal, and he's ba'aleha, and is he chayv to pay her halachically? So, like, how do we view that? There's a ma'aseh iser, but you,
Based it.
yeah. We made an agreement. We made an agreement.
Question.
We made an agreement.
Yeah, but that goes back to Eric's question. What are you doing?
No, but there she's motivated by the dollars. There she's motivated by the dollars. So she'll say, I know I'm not a tzaddikus, but he agreed to pay me. I want the money. What'd you think?
Oh.
You would think
There's a
also?
concept of it. So it even has its own name.
But that's not, that doesn't mean that there's a mechayev to actually pay. That just means if you pay, it has a din of an esnan zona.
If you pay anyone for any type of sin, can you collect? Like, you
Fine.
steal that for me, and you don't pay him, can you take it to Beis Din?
Fine.
What
Fine. True. It's like it's looking at kinyanim through the lens of Avera. I don't know. I have no idea. Got a lot of Mekilim in the room though. I don't know.
You know, the Mason Matzman Russia, you can't go
Ah.
say, I did this, that, and the other thing, or she, I don't know.
So then maybe Palgina Dibura, he's not going to make her a Russia, but it's not going to make her a Russia, but he's going to have to pay her. Right. Wow. I wonder. Okay, next, let's get back to our sugya. Masiv Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes asks, and Rashi was very, very nice to us over here and says, Le Reb Yanai, which throws us back one amud, which is 9 lines from the bottom, which is where we ended yesterday with the story of Rav Yanai. Let's remember Rav Yanai. He says that you can borrow items, you can borrow fruits from an ani in the Shvi'is year and pay him back in the Shminis year. We said that's mutter just like Esnan Zona. So Rav Sheshes has a problem with Rav Yanai's shita. Let's take a look at this case. Bottom 2 lines. Omer Adam lechamarav ulefoalav, to the donkey drivers and to his workers. Lechu ve'achlu b'dinar zeh. Here's a coin. Here's a $100 bill. Go eat. Or he says, Tze'u u'shesu b'dinar zeh. Go eat and go drink. So the halacha is ve'eno koshesh, turning to the top of Samech Gimel Amud Beis. There are no concerns, says the Gemara. Lo mishum shvis, v'lo mishum meiser, v'lo mishum yayin nesech. That there would be no. Eric, can you pass me that sitter, please, just for a second? Thank you. There would be no concerns, thank you, of shvis, of meiser, or of yayin nesech. So I'm asking my workers, I'm paying them, go, have a good time. The night's on me, but we don't have to worry about any of these things. Rashi. Lo mishum shvis shema yikchu bo perish shvis min achashu b'mochram v'chule. We're not concerned about what they buy with my money. Okay. V'im amar lehem tzu'u v'achlu v'ani poreya. But if he says to them, go and eat, run up a tab, and then I'll pay, or tzu'u u'shesu v'ani poreya, then choshesh mishum shvis mishum meiser u'mishum yain nesech. Chakira. If he gives them money in advance, we're not concerned about what they're going to buy. But if they're first buying and then he's gonna pay off the tab to the restaurant, then we're concerned. Alma, says the Gemara, ki kapara dmei iser kapara, that when he is paying, he's paying potentially for iser. And hachanami, so too in our case of Rav Yanai, ki kapara dmei isura kapara. So says the Gemara, that then is the case that he would then seemingly be paying for Isser. So what does that mean by Rav Yanai? That means, hold on one second, let's just connect it. That means that in Rav Yanai's case, his case was, I'm borrowing food from you in the 7th. Now I'm paying you back in the 8th. So the Gemara says, just like in this case of Tzuv Achlav Ani Poreya tomorrow, it's going to be Aser, so to buy Shvis, Rav Yanai should be wrong. That's the Gemara's question. We see that when my workers run up a tab, and I have to pay up a tab later, I'm concerned about the halachos of what they did on day 1 when they went out that night. I'm concerned about shvius and yain nesech v'chulei. So too by Rav Yanai's case, we shouldn't have said Rav Yochanan was the Mar Makom on the bottom of Samach Beis and Beis to be mati. Rav Yanai's case should be aser because over here it's aser. So the Gemara says, Tir Gemara B'chizda, B'chen v'ni hamakifo, d'mishtabidle. It's a store owner that allows for credit to be on the books. When I was in Shalvim, I ran up a tab in the Makolet there. It was close. They sold those chocolate Israeli wafers, Givaldik, every day came out with a big thing of some sugary drink. I don't remember what it was. So I ran up a tab. So it says the Gemara, well, that's this guy. He's B'chen v'ni hamakifo. And here's the lamdus. The nishtabidle. There's a shibud. To kevan de urche le'akufe, kanile bedinar gabe. Says the Gemara that is considered to be the case. And in the case of Rav Yanai, in Rav Yanai's case, it was not like this. There was no shibud. So Rav Yanai's case was mutter. And in this case, it would be aser. So says the Gemara, wait 1 second. Aval chenveni she'ein makifo mai. If the chenveni doesn't allow for credit, typically mai, would we say that it's mutter? Would we say that that's acceptable to then tell the workers that they can go out and eat and the owner will pay the bill later? Would that really be okay if there was no credit? Because we're basically changing the brisa. Then when the brisa that wraps up to the top of this page says, go out and I'll pay you later, or then we just came up with a new distinction of chenveni makifo. What we should have then seen in the brayse is liflog v'lisni b'didah. We should have seen a case scenario where we made a distinction within that case. That would be a better way to learn. That if we'd say tzuva achlu b'dinar zeh, that it would be aser. That's true. That's only true when there's a chenveni who takes credit where you instantly have a chiyu. Aval chenveni she'en makifa mutter, and we don't see that. That's not the way the brisa was formulated. And furthermore, chenveni she'en makifo milo mishtabed. Even if there's a chenveni for whom he doesn't typically keep credit, lemaisi you still have to pay him right away. What's the difference if chenveni is makifo or the chenveni is not makifo? After all, the Amar Rava, Homer lechavero tein mana leploni ve'yiknu kol nechasai lach kanemi din arev. There's a din of arev, the guarantor, no matter what it would count in that case. And really, this is just giving a broader idea that whether or not the store owner holds credit, if I take something from the store, I have an instant shibud. Well, if it holds credit, you owe money because you took something. You owe money. So you have a system of credit. The distinction is a distinction without a difference. It's irrelevant. Don't say that. It says the Gemara. Ela Amar Rava, you're right. Loshna makifo v'loshna de'ein makifo. Whether or not there's credit, it doesn't matter. Afal gav de mishabele keven de lo miyached shiabude lo nisar. As long as the shibud is not set aside in advance, then it is going to be permissible. We actually skip a line and a half, but hacha, first word on the line is miyached. Hacha, but over here, in the case of our Mishnah, our Bryce, at the top of the page where we wanted to say Palginon, Liflog V'lisni B'didah, there Amar Papa, Kigon Shehiktim Lo Dinar. That's why it was Aser. In the Bryce, when it said, Tze'u V'achlu V'ani Porea, in that case, he gave money in advance. He was pulling from his credit. He didn't create a shibud. I put money on my tab, so I had a I prepaid. Thank you for the word. I prepaid already. That's Pashut Aser. That's not allowed. That was the Brisa. But the case by Rav Yana, Lav Dafka, that's going to be problematic. So that's what the Gemara is saying. And Amar Rav Kahana, a little bit more, about 2/3 of the way down on Samach Gimel Amud Beis. Amrisa l'shmaisa kame de Rav Zvid minarda. I was talking about this case with Rav Zvid, says Rav Kahana. And Amar Le, he said, Ihachi, adatani tzu'u v'achlu tzu'u v'shasu v'ani poreya. You should change that. If it's a question of that phraseology, which is the language we have on the second line of this page, it should have said something different. Se'u ve'achlu, se'u ushasu ve'ani mechashev. It shouldn't have said ani porea. If you're saying the brisa where it was prepaid, but look at the language of the brisa on the second line. Se'u ve'achlu ve'ani porea. No, you paid already. You paid already. It was prepaid. So therefore, it should have said, Va'ani mechashev. I'll make a cheshbon. I'll determine what my balance is after you go out to dinner. But the language of the brisa then would be wrong. Ella, so therefore, Amarle, you're right. Okay, you're right. 100%. Tani, you're right. Tze'u va'ani mechashev. You're right. That's what we should have done. Rav Ashi says, no. Kegon shenatal v'nasan biyad. Rashi says that we're talking about where it was given by hand. Let's see what this means. Amar le Rav Yemar le Rav Ashi ihachi. If the money was given directly to the person, instead of saying that, if he gave money to the workers to go out, it should say tilu ve'achlu tilu shasu, that he handed them money, not that they should eat and then there will be a tab, or they'll eat and then it'll be deducted from the prepay. No, but rather it should say that take the money. So says the Gemara, yeah, that's another possibility. Amar le, Tani, you should change the brisa, tilu va'achlu tilu ushasu. So we're getting very lenient with the text of this brisa at the top of the page. It is a difficult piece of Gemara, but most importantly for our purposes, it doesn't undermine Rav Yanai. That was really what we were after today, is trying to finish the conversation about Rav Yanai. And let's review that Rav Yanai said you can borrow from poor people in the 7th and pay back in the 8th. Rav Yochanan says, what was this language? Yos Heinada. They're doing something givaldic because we can bifurcate the two. You wanted to ask from our case that if you tell your workers to go out, we're concerned about them eating things that were not ma'usar, things that were shvius, things that were yain nesach. Yeah, that's only true in certain scenarios where the money was either prepaid, whatever the answers were. But we're not concerned about Rav Yanai. Rav Yanai's din stands. And therefore, as we were half joking about yesterday, it's actually not a bad business model for very wealthy people to help out those who are not very wealthy people during the year of Shvius. Borrow their food. What are you going to do with it? I have no idea. Just borrow their food and then pay them back. Say, thank you very much. How much do you charge per pound? I'll pay you back next year. It's completely mutter. All right, you may need to help me with this next piece because I didn't totally prepare, but it's worth us moving ahead a little bit because we have a little bit of a bigger block tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to learn together on Shabbos. I'm going to be in Skokie for Sheva Brachos Baruch Hashem. I'm going to ask Rabbi Handler if he can sub for me, or we'll just see if I could really push a little further tomorrow night and then maybe Sunday night. We'll see. But I'd rather not. I'd rather you still have shiur on Shabbos. I don't want to take that away. Okay, let's learn a little bit more Gemara. We're 6-7 lines from the bottom. Yasiv Rav Nachman ve'Ula ve'Avimi bar Papa. These 3 people, Rav Nachman, Ula, and Avimi bar Papa, they were learning. V'yasiv Rab Chia bar Ami Gabayu, and Rab Chia was there as well. V'yasve v'kami boilu, and the questions were being discussed as followed. Secharo lishbor b'yayin nesech mahu. If someone was hired to break barrels of yayin nesech, can you do that? We've discussed employment with yayin nesech already. You're not allowed to be the moving company for yayin nesech. That's not allowed. Remember yesterday's discussion about scharo aser. Is your salary forbidden? Yes or no? So here we want to know, your job is to take a sledgehammer and to destroy it. That's your job. So listen, let's talk, right? You're making money from working with yain nesech in the destruction of yain nesech. But that therefore means that you need the bottles to exist in order to break them, for you to make money. Machlokas tanoim. So says the Gemara like this. Mi amrinan, kevan derotze b'kiyumo aser. I need them to exist in order for me to break them. Odilma kol limeute tifla shapir dummy. Or anything that's there. No, I need it there to destroy it. It's like going to those like destroy places where they like give you full sets of dishes and you go in there with a baseball bat and you push it, let all your frustrations out. So the whole point of the plates and the glasses and all the breakables, all the pottery, is so that you can destroy it. So I love this, the lumdus of the Gemara. Do we say that because I care about the kiyum, I need them to exist in order for me to destroy them, therefore it's a problem? Or no, do we not say that? That kol lema'ute tifla, any action that you do to reduce that which is foolishness is mutter. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman, Yishbor v'tava alav bracha, givaldik parnasa. So he held like the first part of the chakira, the second part of the chakira. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to start a lot of businesses from this Daf Yomi shiur. We'll call it bottle breaking or something like that. Okay, says the Gemara, Lema Mesayele. Maybe we have a brisa that supports Rav Nachman's shita. The brisa says, Ein odrin, you can't dig or hoe in the ground. Im ha'oved kochavim b'kiloim. That's not allowed. Top of Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Aval okrin imo, you are allowed to uproot kidei limuute es hatifla. Givaldik. That's a perfect raya for Rav Nachman. So Rashi says at the top of the page, which really just picks up on the language of the Chakira. Rashi says, Aval okrin lahashlichan leibud ve'afal gav derotze bekiyuman shelo ye'akrim me'alein ad she'akrim hu. So that we want to be involved in that process of Akira. Therefore, it's okay. Lemuute esatifla. So says the Gemara, Savrua Hamani. Who is this brisa like? The one about Ein Odrim Me'oved Kochavim, but you can be Oker Kedei Lemuute Esatifla. Rabbi Akiva It's Rabbi Akiva who holds that you can destroy the tifla. Samach Daled Amud Aleph, 2 lines down. Omar Hamekayim B'Kilayim Loke. He held that if you are going to keep up kilayim, you're supporting keeping it alive, the kilayim, then you get malchus. So let's look at this brisa. Detanya. If you're assisting, you're weeding, you're covering to protect the kilayim, you get malchus. Rabbi Akiva Omer, af hamekayim, even if you are just keeping it around. My time of Rabbi Akiva. Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Sadecha lo sizra kilayim, ein li ela zorea, mikayim minayin, Talmud lomar. And this is, the pasuk doesn't say lo kilayim. That's actually just pasha, not true. That's not what the pasuk says. So if you look on the side here, it says kilayim sadecha lo. It's actually moving the breaks in the regular part of the pasuk, but nevertheless, that's how he learned it. Ve'ilu lemu'ute tifla, forget about Mekayim. But if I'm reducing it down to nothingness, then that is shari. So perhaps, says the Gemara, that the brisa is a raya for Rabbi Akiva, for Reb Nachman, and Rabbi Akiva is the name being attached to this shita. So says the Gemara, lo, that's not necessarily true. 8 lines down, 8 lines down on Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Hamani, perhaps, who is that brisa like? Remember, the brisa said, Ein odron esau im ha'ove kochavim bekilayim, and the brisa also said, Aval okrini mokadei lemu'ute esa tifla. Perhaps, says the Gemara 7 lines down, Hamani rabbanon he. Says the Gemara, well, I rabbanon, my area okrin, afilu kiyume nami shapir dami. Even just the kiyum would be problematic, would be mutter. So says the Gemara, no, hacha b'mayaskinan, how could it be that we could read this like the rabbanon? Says the Gemara, because kigon de ka'avid bechinam. If you're doing something for the guy and you're doing it for free, that would be problematic. We have a halacha called lo sechanim, and you're not allowed to do these things for free. So says the Gemara, the Amar Litein Mid Rabbi Yehuda Nishma Rabbi Akiva, and from the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, we're able to infer the shita of Rabbi Akiva, which is why we're still able to have a raya for the shita of Rav Nachman. So how does that work? So says the Gemara, Lav Amar Rabbi Yehuda Aser Litein Lamatna Schinam Aval Lemute Tifla Shapir Dami Rabbi Akiva Nami Afal Gav Amar Rabbi Akiva Mekayim Bekalem Loke Lemute Tifla Shapir Dami V'Sulamidi. The Gemara uses this as a conclusive raya that even if you say that brisa is going to be like the Rabban, and it doesn't matter, we can still infer the shita of Rabbi Akiva from Rabbi Yehuda, and that means that Rav Nachman is correct, and this is also quoted in Shulchan Aruch, this din, that if you get a job to break bottles of yain nesech, that is completely mutter. Tavo alav bracha. It's an ideal profession because you're removing things that are asur b'anah from the world. We'll stop right here. Mirza Hashem, tomorrow night we'll pick up with Hadr Yasve becoming Ba'alahu, a continuation of the story about a third of the way down on Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Wishing you all a beautiful night.